The last Thanksgiving. Mom said it'd be our last Thanksgiving together. I just didn't know she meant it literally. I got her text on a gray Tuesday between meetings. Dinner at the house this year. No excuses. All of you. Please. There were 3 dots, then they vanished, then came back again, like she was trying to say more and couldn't. It's important, she added. I want us whole. Whole. The word landed in that soft, bruised part of my chest where family lives. It's funny how one syllable can sound like both a prayer and a threat. I called her, but she didn't pick up. I almost didn't go. Almost. But obligation is a rope, and it pulls even when you pretend you're too busy to feel the tug. By Thursday, the sky was a glass bowl of cold, the kind that makes your breath a ghost. I drove the 2 hours alone, hands at 10 and 2, the radio murmuring commercials for kitchen appliances and winter sales, the kind of noise that lets you not think too hard. The old neighborhood always smells like oak leaves and someone's laundry. When I turned onto our street, the maple out front had shed almost everything, except one stubborn blaze of red, high up, like the house itself was holding a torch. Mom had left the porch light on early, like she always did. In the window, the same ceramic turkey hunkered on the sill, cracked wing repaired with her steady hand 30 years ago. The screen door creaked the same way. The house sighed the same way. Lena, she called from the kitchen, don't stand there with your city cold. Come, oh, look at you. You're freezing. Her arms wrapped around me, and for a second, I was 5 again with a scraped knee. The smell of onions and soap and the fabric softener she never switched brands on, because why mess with a thing that works? Her sweater was warm. Her shoulder was my favorite shelf. I didn't know I was shaking until she said, "Hey, hey, you're here." And I realized how afraid I'd been that I'd arrive and she wouldn't be. "Hi, Ma." I lifted one of the grocery bags. "Store-bought pies. Don't judge me." She grinned, the left side higher than the right, like always. "I raised you right. You brought whipped cream." I followed her into the kitchen. The counter looked like a magazine spread designed by someone who remembered. Mashed potatoes tucked under a tea towel, stuffing in her battered blue casserole. The turkey resting like a sleeping soldier, bronze and dignified. Jazz hummed low on the radio. That same station, that never changed. Mom's hair was shorter than last year, and the winter light found the hollows under her eyes. But she moved with purpose. The choreography of a woman who has cooked her way through every season of grief. "Is he coming?" I asked, which was our shorthand for my brother, Nico. He said he'd be here by 4. She stirred the gravy like it might tell us our future if we listened hard enough. And Mara's catching a ride with him. Mara was our sister. Mara always fell upward, into good luck, good hair, good men, or at least the kind who looked good in photos. I'd barely talked to either of them since July. Words had become sharp. We'd all bled a little. "Mom," I said, and the word broke. "What's going on?" Her hand kept circling the gravy. "We're having Thanksgiving, baby." "Since when do you say no excuses to Thanksgiving?" She set the whisk down. She looked at me with those clear hazel eyes that could spot a lie before it left your mouth. "Since I decided I'm done with the way this family breaks and never picks up the pieces." I opened my mouth to press, to push, but tires crunched the driveway. A car door slammed, then another. Laughter, too loud, came through the walls. "Showtime," Mom said and kissed my cheek. "Put the pies on the back porch, will you? It's cold enough out there, it'll do the fridge's work." By 4, the kitchen felt like a train station. Nico breezed in carrying flowers he'd absolutely picked up at the gas station, then pretended he'd grown them from seed. He hugged me awkwardly, like two people shaking hands through a window. Mara arrived in a coat that made her look like an expensive cloud. She squeezed me and whispered, "You look tired," which is something people say when they want to be kind and still win. We did the dance. The "you look amazing" and the "traffic was awful" and the "did you hear about" and the "how's work." Mom moved among us like a conductor, tapping us back into rhythm. At one point, she turned off the jazz and put on something old from a cracked CD. And Nico went quiet, then laughed, embarrassed, when he realized she'd found the song he used to spin to in socks when he was 10. For one blurry moment, I could see the ghosts of us, small and sun-salted, arguing over drumsticks and the biggest piece of pie. Then Mom said grace, and the room stilled, and the future tilted. "Thank you for this food," she said, eyes closed, her fingers warm in my left and Mara's right. "Thank you for this house that raised us and broke us and sheltered us anyway. Thank you for the years we were given and the ones we weren't. And thank you for the courage we have, or borrow, or invent to tell the truth." We murmured, "Amen," and her hand squeezed mine. I thought she'd launch into her usual instructions about passing to the right, keeping elbows off the table, being generous with the rolls. Instead, she said, "I'm selling the house." It was like all the air left the room and came back carrying knives. "What?" Nico's fork clinked his plate. "No," I said, before I knew I was speaking. Mara leaned back. "Is this one of those reverse psychology speeches, Mom?" Because, no. Mom poured herself cranberry like it was wine. "I've made the decision. It's time." For a second, we were kids again, and Mom's voice was the law of gravity. Then the teenage versions of us woke up, the ones with too much feeling and nowhere to put it. "You can't," Nico said, which was how he'd always argued, as if the world obeyed him when he told it what not to do. "This is the only place that... This is Dad's workshop in the garage. This is... This is where he walked out," Mom said softly, "and where we survived him." Nico deflated, then flared. "So what? Let the house go because his ghost still trips you up? What about the good stuff? The backyard plays? The way the banister sings? Lena's height marks on the kitchen doorway? Mara's prom photos on the stair?" "Those prom photos are in a box," Mara said, and then to Mom, "You could have told us in a letter. Or, like, ever. Not over potatoes. Would that have made it easier?" Mom asked. "It would have made it." "Not this," I said, feeling 12 and raw. "You don't drop this like you're asking someone to pass the salt." "I didn't drop it," she said. "I've been carrying it since July." We all went very still. July was when the fighting had gone from surface sparks to a house on fire. July was when Mara stormed out and stopped answering my calls. July was when Nico decided his silence counted as a solution. July was when I told Mom I was too tired to drive out on Sundays, and then stayed in the city and pretended I had work. "Why?" I asked, though maybe I already knew. "Why sell?" she said. Because I can't climb the stairs without thinking of each step by name. Because the roof leaks where your father once fixed things and I can't fix a man's failings with shingles. Because, she paused, because I don't have time to spend keeping a house from falling down, when what I want is to help you stop falling away from each other. She said it with her eyes on me. The heat rose in my face. Don't make this my fault, I snapped, and immediately hated how that sounded. I'm not making it anyone's fault, she said. I'm making choices with the time I have. What does that mean? Nico asked. But he was looking at me too, like he wanted me to say it out loud so it would be real enough to fight. Mom lifted her water glass. The sunlight caught the line of her wrist, the constellation of freckles I used to trace with a crayon when I was small. It means I saw my doctor. It means there's something to talk about. But we are going to eat first. We did not eat first. Mom, I said, my chair scraping back. No, tell us. Mara reached for her hand. Do you need to sit? Do you feel faint? Mom smiled, that patient, tired smile she wore for toddlers and telemarketers. I'm not going to faint, baby. I'm going to tell you, and you're going to hear me, and then you're going to breathe. Silence swept the table. Beyond the window, a crow stepped in the leaf litter like a big old gossip. It's ovarian, she said, not making us drag it out of her. Stage 3 when we found it. I've had 2 rounds already. She tapped her scarf. New fashion? The room did that thing where edges go sharp and voices sound like they're underwater. I hated that I was looking at her hair when I should have been looking at her hands. I hated that I was cataloging details like evidence. I hated that there had been 2 rounds, and I hadn't noticed because I'd decided I was too busy for Sundays. I asked you if you wanted lattes and you said no because you were cutting back on caffeine, I said. It came out as a sob because it wasn't about coffee. It was about 1,000 tiny moments I had mistaken for normal. She reached for me. You had a presentation due. I didn't want to make you. Make me what? I shouted, ugly and hot. Make me your daughter? Make me show up? You called this dinner important, and I thought it was, God, I don't even know what I thought it was. A lecture about family politics. A trap to get me and Mara in the same room. Not, I choked. Not this. Mara threw her napkin down like a flag. You told me it was anemia, she cried, betrayal burning the edges of her words. You said the tiredness was anemia. It was easier, Mom said simply. For both of us. You said you had a flight to Ibiza. Nico stood and didn't move, like a man about to jump who hasn't decided whether it's a bridge or a pool. Stage 3. His jaw clenched. What's the plan? Treatment, Mom said. Then more time. Then more treatment. Then, she shrugged, whatever there is. I could hear the old house listening. The radiator clicked like someone clearing their throat. The clock above the stove hummed like a moth. Outside, a neighbor's kid laughed, a sound so bright it felt like the wrong season. And selling the house helps. How? Nico asked, but his voice had softened. You want money? Is that it? No, she said. I have enough for what I need. The house is not being sold to pay bills. The house is. She looked at the wall like she could see through it. It's my wedding day, and the fever night when I held you through RSV, Lena, and the corner where we set up the Christmas tree, and the marks on the kitchen doorway for every inch of you, all of you. But it's also every argument that calcified into silence. It's the room your father slammed, the window he looked out of when he said he was done, the long driveway where you two learned to leave before you learned to come back. I need you to start remembering each other somewhere that isn't heavy with ghosts. So you're exorcising the house, Mara said, dry as a bone. Because when she isn't crying, she's a comedian. Mom smiled, softened. Exactly. It was Nico who noticed first. What's this? He asked, voice small, pointing toward the centerpiece, a drowsy candle lodged inside a ring of dried leaves, and was that? Cassette tape. Mom's eyes glinted. Dessert comes with a show, she said. She stood, wiped her hands on her apron, and went to the credenza. From the drawer, she pulled out an old tape recorder, the kind with big plastic buttons and a handle like a lunchbox. She set it on the table like an offering. I didn't know anyone still owned one of those, Mara said, astonishment breaking through the fog. You were born to the soundtrack of one, Mom said. You just don't remember. She pressed eject, and the little silver mouth opened. She slid a tape in, labeled in Mom's neat teacher print. Thanksgiving, 93, listen to the end. A feeling like vertigo swept me. 1993 was the year after Dad left. 1993 was the year we learned how to call each other for dinner from the back steps, and only two of us would come. 1993 was the year Mom's hands shook when she reached for the oven door, and then didn't, because they knew work, and work steadies a person. Where did you find this? Nico asked. Behind the bookshelf in the den, Mom said. Fell there when your father and I were arguing. I wasn't ready to hear it then. I wasn't ready to hear myself. I was ready now. Before any of us could decide we weren't, she pressed play. For a second, there was only the hush of old air, then a sound like a soft storm, children. U.S., running in circles and stomping on hardwood, and someone, me, singing without a key or a care. Then Mom's voice, younger and tired in that particular way that's almost holy. Okay, we're going to say something we're thankful for. Nico, go. Rolls, Nico said instantly. We laughed, all of us, right there at the table in the present. The tape lagged, then Dad's voice cut in, disembodied. Familiar, in the way a smell is familiar, even when you can't decide if you love it or hate it. Family, he said, and there was something in the word that made my stomach drop. The way he said it, like a person tells a story they wish they believed. You could hear the front door between his syllables. You could hear how he was already gone. I looked at Mom. Her eyes were shadows, but her mouth was steady. On the tape, there was clatter, then my voice. I'm thankful Mommy let me stir the gravy, even though I spilled. Mom's younger laugh came through, the kind that used to make me clumsy with joy. Of course you spilled, Lainey. A little mess is how we know we're making something. Then a scrape, a chair. Dad again. I'm going to take a walk, he said, which we all knew hurt because he never just walked. He left with his jacket and his music and his apology scribbled on a note we couldn't read because our eyes were blurry. The tape garbled, as if the recorder didn't want to witness what came next. But it did. It gave us Mom's voice. Splintered, but not broken. Kids, she said, gently as the front door sighed. We're going to keep eating. And then a pause, longer than the space between breaths, and then her alone. The sound of the house exhaling. The sound of a woman deciding to live inside a sentence with a comma instead of a period. Note to my future self, she whispered into that old machine. Words she never meant to be found by us, and absolutely meant to be found by us. If you're listening to this, you made it through this night. If you ever get to choose the end of anything, choose the end that gathers them. Choose the end that leaves music. Choose the end with good dishes and mashed potatoes and forgiveness like gravy you can pour over anything and make it tender. Choose the end that lets them walk away together. Mom's hand found mine under the table and squeezed hard. My eyes blurred and the room doubled. Nico bent his head like he was reading a prayer off his plate. Mara's mascara made small black sailboats under her eyes. On the tape, there came the sound of a spoon reaching the bottom of the pot. Scrape, scrape, scrape. The sound of making sure there was enough, even when there wasn't. Then the tape clicked. The recorder hummed low and then quiet. When silence arrived, it did not hurt. It felt like a soft coat being laid over our shoulders. I found it in August, Mom said. She looked like a lighthouse. I listened to it 3 times that day. Then I made a plan. Is it a plan we're going to hate? Mara said. Because jokes are how she holds the bridge. You already hate it, Mom said, without heat. Selling the house is part of it. Telling you about the diagnosis tonight is part of it. She laughed at our faces. Dinner and doom, what a hostess. But there's more. She stood. From under the credenza, she pulled out an old wooden box, the one Dad used to keep spare change and bent nails and ball bearings in, and set it on the table. Inside were 3 envelopes, cream and heavy, each with a name on it in that same careful teacher script. L-E-N-A. N-I-C-O-M-A-R-A. My hands trembled when I picked mine up. I knew, before I opened it, that I would keep it forever, that the paper would absorb my skin and live in a drawer until my own daughter cleaned out my things and found it and cried and read it again. Open them, Mom said. I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out 2 sheets, both crinkled at the edges, like someone had already read them 1,000 times, which meant she had, as she wrote and crossed out and wrote again. The first page was practical. Her will explained in simple words, because she knew how I hate legal ones. The proceeds from the house, split into 3, with a note about a piece set aside for charity. In case one of you wants, she'd written, to buy back the table, or pay rent for a year, or go back to school, or take time to forgive yourself. The second page was tabs of memories, stitched together like a patchwork quilt. A scrape on my knee she was sure would scar. It didn't. The bad haircut we both pretended we liked. We didn't. The time I won the spelling bee with quietude and then learned what it meant by living it. At the end, her words turned to present, to instruction. But they were soft, not orders. You haven't done this wrong, she wrote. You're just learning. When you forget, start again. Some things you will never get over, my girl. Get through them. Take your brother's hand when you can. Call your sister when it's late. Be tender. Be brave. Both are the same thing, really. By the time I finished, my tears had soaked the ink at the bottom, and her signature blurred into my fingerprints. Nico cleared his throat, which meant he was crying and trying not to let the room hear. You gave me Dad's watch, he said barely. You should keep it. I did for 40 years, Mom said lightly. It ticks just fine. It'll tick on your wrist and remind you you can show up on time for the people you love. Mara made a sound like a laugh folded into a sob. You gave me a list of therapists. I gave you some names, Mom said, because some of what you carry is heavy and gold and worth keeping, and some of it is heavy and useless, and it's time to put it down. You don't have to carry everyone's feelings to deserve love. Mara's mouth wobbled. I thought you didn't notice. I noticed, Mom said. I notice everything about you. We sat there with our letters, a small atlas for each of us, and the tape recorder between us like an altar. The turkey was rapidly becoming a metaphor for the moment. Carved, going cold, still beautiful. I wanted to eat and also to never taste anything again, because the only thing I wanted to swallow was time. Outside, the crow had a friend. They hopped together along the fence line, nudging leaves. The porch light flickered, then steadied. A blink, a reminder to pay the electric bill, a tiny miracle. Here's my last ask, Mom said, breathing in like a swimmer at the lip of a wave. Do not fight over this house. If you find you can't be kind when the realtor comes, and strangers walk through and say something stupid about paint colors, then don't be here. I'm not handing you a battleground. I'm handing you a field and asking you to plant something. Like what? I asked, voice small. She shrugged. A day every month where you meet in a place that none of us have ever cried in. A joint savings account you use to take each other to dinner when one of you gets a promotion or a broken heart. A promise to not let the first time you call be only when someone dies. And when you... Nico trailed off. He couldn't say it, which meant I had to. When? I asked. Her smile was a soft flag. When, she said, and the word was a doorway. We stepped through together. Then you pick a place for Thanksgiving that isn't here, and you bring the same cracked turkey. And you tell the stories out loud that you've been telling in your heads for years. You say, remember the year Mom made us listen to our own ghosts? And you laugh, and someone burns the rolls, and you eat them anyway. It turned out we did eat first, or after, or during. The moments braided together, salt and sugar, laughter and ache, the way good families do when they aren't looking. We passed bowls with shaking hands. Nico cut the pie like it was a contract. Equal parts, no argument. Mara scraped the burned bits from the green beans and said, chic? And we loved her for it. Mom leaned back and listened to the sound we made and let it wash her. At some point, we drifted into the living room, each of us carrying something. A plate, a letter, an old story newly lit. The couch sagged the same way it had in 1993. The rug still had the ghost of a grape juice stain, even though it hadn't held grape juice in 20 years. The house felt like it was inhaling and exhaling with us, its ribs old but strong. Before you all start packing up my good silver and your childhoods, Mom said, I want to give you one more thing. She stood carefully, then went to the hall closet and reached up to the high shelf where secrets live. When she turned back, she was holding a shoebox covered in wrapping paper. My father once bought on sale. Tiny snowmen on a green field. The corners were worn white. She set it on the coffee table and patted the spot beside her. until we'd crowded close. Inside was a stack of cassette tapes, each labeled in that same steady hand. Nico 10, Mara 13, Lena 17, MOM 43, MOM NOW. Every time we survived something, she said, I talk to the house, which is to say, I talk to you. The last one is for after I go. Don't listen to it until you need to. You'll know when. We looked at each other like people on a small boat in big water. I had no idea where we were headed, but for the first time in a long time, I trusted the boat. We stayed late. We lingered after clearing the dishes, after running the water hot, after drying the good plates with a towel, soft from 1,000 washes. Mom insisted on doing the pots. I insisted on doing them with her. We stood side by side and let the suds cover our wrists. The kind of quiet labor that says what words can't. At the door, I pinned her to the wall with my hug. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't even balanced. But it was everything. I'll be back Sunday, I said against her hair. Every Sunday. She pulled back so our foreheads touched. I know, baby. Mara kissed her 7 times because Mara's superstitions are just the shape of love. Nico rested his forehead against hers and whispered something into her ear that made her laugh. He had brought her gas station flowers. He would bring her better ones, I knew. He would bring her himself. The night had deepened by the time we stepped onto the porch. You could taste ice in the air. The stars were moments you could wish on if you still believed in that kind of thing. I did. Suddenly, I did. Hey, Nico said over the car roof, not looking at me, because that's how we talk when it matters. We good? No, I said, and then, not yet. But yes. Mara slipped her arm through mine. I'll start calling you again. Properly. I'll answer, I said, which was the honest part I'd been avoiding. The porch light blinked once, then steadied. In the window, the ceramic turkey watched us like a small, ridiculous guardian. Mom stood behind it, one hand lifted. For a flicker, I remembered being small, that thrill in my stomach, whenever I thought, maybe, just maybe, the world was kinder than the news said it was. On the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio. The silence in the car wasn't heavy anymore. It was that other kind, the one that lets you hear your own thoughts and not be afraid of them. Now and then, I pressed my fingers to the envelope in my coat pocket like a talisman. Somewhere, under the hum of the engine and the hiss of tires on cold road, I could hear it, faint, staticky, resolute. My mother's voice on an old tape, telling her future self to choose the ending that gathers. We sold the house 2 months later. We didn't fight over paint or price. We met the young couple who would raise their baby under that roof and told them where the good light fell in the afternoon. We told them the radiator's name, Matilda, and the trick to the pantry door. We told them to put the tree in the corner by the window because that was the corner with the stories. We walked through the empty rooms one last time. Me, Nico, Mara, Mom moving slowly, touching the walls with her fingertips like a blessing. When the realtor handed over the keys, I thought it would feel like a theft. It didn't. It felt like a door closing softly against winter, the house settling its shoulders, the past making room for future children's footsteps. We took the ceramic turkey. We left the hooks in the mudroom, a promise to hang up your coat when you come home. On the first Sunday after closing, We met at a diner off Route 6 that none of us had ever cried in. We ordered pancakes that tasted like they'd been cooked on a griddle seasoned with 1,000 breakfasts. We argued about nothing and everything: syrup or jam, booth or window, whether you can call yourself a dog person if you like cats too. Mom wore a bright scarf and a tired smile, and let us be loud. When it was time to go, we hugged in the parking lot beside a rusty food truck and promised next Sunday, same time, same place. And then we kept our promise. The cassette labeled Mom now stayed in the shoebox on my dresser until spring. We didn't open it because we didn't need to. Mom was busy being here. She made it to cherry blossoms and lilies and the first warm day when the city smells like a promise you can keep. She sat in my apartment and made notes on my garden balcony in a notebook divided into seasons. She cried in my arms when the chemo made everything taste like coins. And then she laughed at me because I cried harder. She told me she wanted a bench somewhere with her name on it, but not a sad one. A bench with a good view, where someone would sit and eat a sandwich and fall in love with their own afternoon. In July, the year came back, around to the month when everything had felt like a cliff's edge. It didn't feel like that this time. It felt like a shoreline, rocks and water, and a long horizon. We were in the hospital room when Mom's breathing turned shallow, when the rhythm shifted, when the room hummed in that other way, the one anyone who's waited knows. Nico had brought the gas station flowers and better ones too. Mara had insisted on bringing a speaker for music, and we put on the jazz station that never changed. Sunlight got everything right, which is to say, it touched what it could and let the rest be. Mom looked at us and did that thing she always did in lines at the grocery store or at the end of a long day. She counted under her breath, 1, 2, 3, as if she needed to know we were all there before she allowed herself to rest. Then she said, clear as a bell, be gentle. And then she wasn't. The tape waited. We waited longer. Grief has its own clocks. You can't set them. I took the box home and placed it on my kitchen table where the light was kind, and there it sat while weeks became a color I learned to live with. One evening in late August, after the day had washed itself of heat, I made tea and opened the shoebox. My hands were steady. I put the cassette in my old thrift store player and pressed play. My mother's voice filled my small kitchen. It was recorded in spring. I could hear birds through an open window and the clink of her favorite mug. Okay, love, she began, and I stood up straighter because that was always how she addressed all of us when she wanted us to do something difficult. With love, like a map. If you're listening to this, she said, I have done the hard part, and so have you. A soft laugh. I am where the water is. I am where you are when you think of me. First, breathe, I did, without meaning to. You are not alone, she said, and I felt the truth of it like sunlight on winter shoulders. By now, you have discovered that the world does not end. It bends. It makes room for your grief and your groceries. She paused. I paused with her, tea halfway to my mouth. Second, she went on, eat something delicious. Not because food heals everything, but because it reminds your body that it's still invited to the party. Third, she said, say one kind thing to your brother and one true thing to your sister today. If you are my son, remember that gentle is a kind of strong. If you are my daughters, remember that soft is a kind of armor. Fourth, her voice wavered and steadied. Do not make a shrine of that house. If you kept a doorknob, hold it when you need to. Then put it down and go outside. There is a bench somewhere with our name on it. She took a sip. I did too. The parallel felt holy. And fifth, she said, when Thanksgiving comes, do the thing we practiced. Burn the rolls, play the tape. Choose the ending that gathers. If you can't be with each other that day, send a voice memo, a song, a recipe with bad handwriting. If you love someone, you will always wish you did it better. That's the tax on love. Pay it gladly. There was a long space, and I thought the tape had ended. Then, quietly, I have loved being your mother. In every version, through every argument, in every house. I loved you loud and quiet and wrong and right, and I would do it all again. You were my field. Look at you, planting. The tape clicked. The room returned. The tea had gone cool. I pressed my fingertips to the table, the wood warm from sun, and realized there was no single thing to do next. There were 100 tiny things. Text Mara, a photo of Mom's favorite bench, the one we found by the river. Call Nico and ask about his day and stay on the line when he pretends he has nothing to say. And then tells me everything. Buy gas station flowers on purpose and put them in a glass on the table because people laugh at gas station flowers until they don't. I have my letter. I have the tape. I have 2 siblings who know how to show up late and still count as early. I have a kitchen where the light is kind. I have a mother's voice on demand saying breathe, saying be gentle, saying choose the ending that gathers. I have next Sunday. We didn't keep the house. We kept the home. And when Thanksgiving came around, we met in a rented space in the community center that smelled like varnish and gym shoes and somebody's salsa class. We brought the cracked ceramic turkey and put it in the center of the folding table and let it preside over the paper plates like a little king who knew how ridiculous he was. Nico made the rolls. They were burnt on one side. We ate them the way you eat a story you want to keep warm. Mara read Mom's letter out loud for anyone who couldn't bear to read it themselves. I brought the tape recorder. We pressed play. We laughed in all the places that mattered and cried in all the places that mattered more. The house belonged to someone else by then. The maple out front held up its torch for a new family. The walls listened to a different jazz station. The kitchen held new messes, new tenderness. Good. That was the plan. That was always the plan. Mom said it'd be our last Thanksgiving together. And she was right. It was. It was the last time we gathered in that house pretending walls could keep us from our endings. Every Thanksgiving since has been the first. The first one we chose. The first one in a world bent into a new shape. The first one where we understood that food is how love sits down and forgives itself. The first one where we finally heard her. Choose the end that gathers. And we did. We still do. Tired of chaos at home? Unlock simple, practical parenting tips to create a calm and loving vibe. Since 2010, Parenting Simply has been your community for connecting with your kids and mastering easy skills to transform your home. Our mission, slash stress, for parents and kids with powerful communication and organizational hacks. Say goodbye to doom and gloom. Parenting can be fun, joyful, and fulfilling. You've got what it takes to be an amazing, loving parent, and we'll show you how. Click the link below for stress-free parenting tools and join our community. Dive into stories that stir your soul. Jackie Smith. Stories is your daily haven for raw emotions, courageous women, and authentic true life narratives. We weave tales of hope, strength, dreams, and the quiet miracles of everyday life. Subscribe now to experience a fresh, heartfelt chapter every day that sparks wonder and connection. Join our community and be part of the journey.